My 27F little sister, 12F, says she's afraid to talk to my dad, M43. How do I stop history from repeating itself? TLDR, my sister is afraid of our father's temper and is expressing feelings I had that ruined my relationship with him when I was her age. How do I convince him to change to save their relationship? A lot of background needs to be laid, so please excuse how long this post is. I'm also a little rattled, so if it seems a bit rambly, I'm sorry. I'll try to keep things organized. I, 27F, am the product of teen pregnancy, and my parents broke up shortly after I was born. My mom's first husband was an emotionally and verbally abusive POS who she married when I was 4 and stayed with until I was 15. I have had to go to years of therapy to heal from the things that man made me believe about myself. Through my childhood, my dad was great, supportive and fun, and a little hot-headed but not scary. I decided to move in with him and my stepmom for the majority of the time when I was 12, as the joint custody agreement my parents had let me choose at that age. And I just needed to escape the hell I was living in. I felt safe finally, and hopefully. Then, a few years later, I felt like I had been dragged back into a different but similar hell. My dad wasn't nearly as overt about it as my mom's ex, but there was always a comment here or there, or an explosive reaction there that made me walk on eggshells around then. He would also routinely badmouth my mom to me, usually with sarcastic comments, which always made me feel like I was in the middle. As soon as I started to want control over parts of my life, it felt like a switch flipped. I felt like I had no real control over my life because he always had an option about what I should and should not do, and if I did anything wrong, it was a huge reaction. I was shamed for costing too much, specifically related to medical bills since I was pretty accident-prone. I got grounded for normal kid things. I was a really good kid and never really did anything wrong. I got yelled at routinely. I was emotionally afraid of my dad. It got so bad that I moved out of his house and back in with my mom my senior year of high school to try to get away, and rarely spoke to my dad until after I graduated college. We reconciled in 2020 after my stepmom finally snapped and asked for a divorce, and he started going to therapy and making amends to try and win her back. He took accountability for his actions towards me, and I felt like I got my real dad back. I forgave him, but I've kind of been waiting for the other shoe to drop. My stepmom did divorce him, and I found out later that she is now with her affair partner. While I do not condone cheating at all, the reason and way she cheated was textbook for an emotionally abused woman, so I don't blame her or hold any ill will towards her. I have 2 little sisters from him and my stepmom, A, 12F, and B, 10F. They are the funniest, sweetest, craziest, most vibrant little humans I've ever met, and I love them to death. I have always had very strong mama bear instincts with my siblings, and they are very strong with those girls. I am also a mom now, and spent the 5 years prior to my baby being born healing from my childhood trauma so that I can break those cycles in my family and my baby can grow up peacefully without any external chaos from his parents. They can create plenty by himself, lol. But I still to this day am extremely triggered by loud noises and yelling. So we do not yell in our house, even though it can be very hard for me due to being yelled at my whole childhood. I also have anxiety and chronic pain conditions, which have both been linked to high levels of cortisol in childhood and being in fight or flight the whole time. So I am in pain basically every day of my life. Since the divorce, my dad has been slipping back into his old ways, yelling and blowing up at people when he feels they've wronged him, including my grandmother, and has gotten so far into conspiracy theories the past few years he tends to be a bit paranoid that everyone is talking bad behind his back to get one over on him somehow. Bottom line, last week my stepmom asked me to talk to A because she is having trouble with my dad, and she knows I've been there. His response when SM told him via text was to accuse her of trying to create a paper trail to establish him as a terrible, violent, dangerous guy to be able to keep the girls from him, which is just utter nonsense. I had a phone call with A, and the whole time I just heard little me talking about how I felt when I was her age. She's scared to talk to him about her feelings because of how he might react. She's afraid of hurting his feelings because he might blow up on her. She also feels like she doesn't want to try anything new, sports, activities, etc., because if she ends up hating it, he won't let her quit. Apparently, he made a comment to her at one point, "I've got a lot riding on you," and she started crying and said, "I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do with that." I feel like I am truly the only one who can save my sisters from experiencing the same traumas as I did and save my dad from himself. I love my dad and he clearly loves all of us. He just doesn't understand how these things are hurting us. I have never even opened up to him about exactly how it felt growing up because until now I was also afraid of him blowing up at me. So, how do I convince my dad to end this cycle and not traumatize my sisters the way I was? How do I approach him in a way that he will actually hear me, rather than pushing back and being defensive or think it's just a grand conspiracy to try and frame him as a bad guy for some reason? I have to address this and advocate for the girls. I just can't figure out the best way to do it so he will listen. Any advice is appreciated.